Have you collected the seeds from your garden right now? You might have already done it, but I'm going to let you know why I am only just collecting the seeds from my garden now, which you might regard as late, but I'm going to tell you why I leave it this late. And I'm also going to share with you some things and some seeds that you may not have thought of collecting. And then finally, I'm going to give you my top tips on how to store your seed so they'll still be super viable next spring. You're a bit late collecting your seeds, Fierceblooms, I hear you cry. Well, let me give you 3 reasons why you'll be collecting them the same late time as me next year. So 1, I love to cut them for bouquets and weddings, and I've got quite a late wedding this year, and seed heads just capture that seasonal moment like nothing else can. So I want to have plenty to be able to cut to represent the season. The other is, do you know what? If you leave your seeds, they will just self-germinate plants on the soil, and you don't have to go to the bother of then germinating them yourself in the greenhouse, laying out soil. All you do is you go around your beds where your seed pods are, the seeds dropped onto the soil. I use open soil beds, and you can collect already self-made little plants without lifting a finger, but Mother Nature has done the work for you. And the third reason, I want to make sure that the seeds on those stems are completely mature. I know people kind of cut them green and then they mature in the bags, but do you know what? The seed has got to have got past a certain developmental stage for it to be completely viable. And I don't want to judge that, I want to have confidence in it. So leaving it as late as possible means that your seed has matured on the plant and it's much, much more likely to be totally viable. So what seeds have you collected? I bet you've collected Magella and Ami and Calendula and perhaps Burplurum, although to be honest with you, I can't get it to grow here. But I'm going to share with you a few things that you perhaps haven't thought. So come with me into our cut flower garden and I'll show you. Cosmos costs quite a lot of money, and when you've grown them and you like the ones that you've got, why don't you grow some seed from it? So this is a seed pod which I think is ready, and why do I think that? It's because it's brown. If you've got with just the pollen on there, it's probably a bit immature. You can also look at seed pods that have absolutely blown, and by that I mean done their thing and exploded to try and get themselves to the earth. You can still collect enough seed from even a blown seed pod, and that way you know it's absolutely as mature as it needs to be. So Cosmos is a great thing to collect seed from. This is Digitalis or Foxglove. It's the common type. You can get F1 hybrids, but then you're not going to get the pure plants from that. I quite like the common type, to be honest, the wild type. So this is what it looks like, and each one of these has got literally thousands of seeds. So this is a perfect stage to get them. Sweet peas. You might not have thought that you can save these, but you absolutely can. The trick with these is to let them go to seed for enough time, hence why I collect my seeds late, to make sure they mature. So if you get in pods that look green, then that is not mature enough. You need to wait until the seed is really black. Borage. Absolutely love it, and really beautiful, amazing flowers. And this is a mature black seed that, to be honest with you, I don't collect. They just grow and survive in my quite exposed solid clay. These are beds that have been kind of, had manure and good compost on them, but they do survive the weather up here in the northwest of England. Magella. It's self-seeded here for the last 3 years. So what you need to do in your site and your soil, and we're all in different kind of areas of the world, is find the places where things do self-seed well and then just keep them there. So this is where my Magella loves to self-seed, so it's always there. This perennial scabiosa, I've self-seeded it from various places in the garden. The pods are brilliant, and I'll be using that in the wedding for some architectural pieces in buttonholes. But you can see just here is a self-seeded plant from this seed. So I never need to buy this plant ever again. All I do is I hunt for the plant. I get rid of the weeds that are around it. So much as dandelions used to be loved by the Victorians for eating, I don't really want any more of them. And that's a new plant for me next year. So this is self-seeded corn cockle. So I had a crop of this in this bed. I pretty much know it's not going to survive here though, because we're on a very exposed westerly. And even though this is a raised bed, either the slugs will get it, or the birds will eat it, or the mice will have it. So I will collect these plants, pot them up and put them in a cold greenhouse to overwinter them, and then put them back outside in the spring. Breadseed poppies, these are one of the three things that survive in my open, very clay soil in the northwest of England. It's this, Magella and sweet rocket. Those are the only things that I know, if I leave them to self-seed outside, are going to stay and be still here for spring. But you need to experiment with your soil and site and conditions to learn what will be good for you, because I think it's unique to every situation where your cut flower garden is, to be honest. This is hesperus or sweet rocket. Comes in a lovely white or pink, well, purple. And truthfully, I never sow this. I never even bother to collect the seeds, although this is the seeds on this very kind of brown stem. There's absolutely loads of them. I've probably got enough hesperus for an entire acre here. But what happens is they land on my open beds of soil, they germinate, they make little plants, and this is biennial, so the plants then will flower for me next spring. I love this with tulips and daffodils, but this is just such an easy thing to have in your garden, because even in my north of England, really exposed clay, solid clay garden, it will overwinter on its own on the outside. So I can't sing hesperus's praises enough, quite honestly. This is aquilegia or granny's bonnet. You can see that that's a really mature seed head. I don't even bother to sow it in a glass house. I just sprinkle it on my open beds. It's really, really hardy. We are really exposed, and this will stand the winter, and it stood quite a few winters. This is Amimagus, which is self-seeded in the open soil of my beds. I don't use plastic or fabric to grow into, because the advantage is you do get these self-seeders. Although I confess I engineered this a bit by putting a mature seed head down and just kind of giving it a little bit of a sprinkle. So in my situation here, which we're quite exposed, we get quite a few westerlies, it does get quite cold and wet, Amimagus will not survive for me outside. I've run the experiment a couple of times now. Sadly, she won't. So I will pot up this plant, put it into a cold greenhouse, and then it's got a nice little root system, and it'll give me earlier flowers, those beautiful umbels, than if I start it off in March. I will also start some off in March, because that will take flowers to a greater length, greater in the year. So yes, highly recommend growing Amimagus and then looking out for these little seedlings. So this is a little poppy seedling, one of those breadseed poppies, which is brilliant for seed heads. And I like to grow these in patches everywhere around the garden, like most things. But you do have to get super good at identifying the seedlings, because they're basically free plants and you haven't had to sow them or do anything to them. And so look at the shape of the leaves and look at the colour of them as well, because you really want to avoid making plants, nurturing them, and they end up being perennial weeds. That's just, haven't got time for that. So get good at plant identification, and then you can group them together and have some free plants that are self-seeded. But use open beds. I really recommend using open beds, because that way all your self-seeds are given a chance to grow as well. So on the left are some browned mature seeds. On the right you can see the still shiny green pods. So you want to, this is delphinium, choose the seeds on the left, and actually they do require some cold to germinate. So it's getting pretty cold out here, but it's not been cold enough. So I will whack these in the freezer and then I will sow them. I think it's really important to focus on the seeds and plants that do really splendidly where you are. So there may be other things that you like to grow, and there are things that I love to grow, but they just really don't love to grow here. So one of the things that does though is honesty or lunaria. I grow tons of the stuff because I love how it dries. I love how it looks in the spring. The only thing is it's a biennial, so you just need to make sure you scatter some of the seeds onto the ground and it does the rest itself. So I just do a bit of that, collect the seeds when I'm peeling the pods for when I'm making my Christmas wreaths. You'll probably see them in one of our online classes where I show you how to do that. And then you just put the seeds on the ground and they're good. Now you've gone to the trouble of collecting your seeds, you really want to store them as carefully as possible. So obviously you're going to dry them if they're damp at all and collect them in paper rather than plastic. But there's a critical thing with seeds. Once they are dry, you want to keep them dry. And you know, the air has quite a lot of humidity, and the temperature, you've got to think of the things that make seeds germinate: water and increased temperature. So to store them, you want to keep them out of a humid environment and you want to lower the temperature. So I keep mine in airtight containers in my fridge, and that's a really optimum way to store it. That way they will store for, frankly, years. So let me know what seeds you've been collecting in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.